Good evening, everyone, to the regular meeting of the Alexander Board of Education for August 19th, 2020. If I could have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
Second.
Mrs. Yedis? Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Okay. And if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, public participation on agenda items. If there's anyone that would like to address the board on anything that's on the agenda, now would be the time. Okay. Okay, if no one wants to address the board, we'll move into treasurer's recommendations. A, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the July 15th, 2020 regular meeting and July 30th, 2020 special meeting.
So moved.
You got my edits,
Yes. Yeah, we will add those in there.
and that's what we're voting on?
Correct. There was, do you have those in front of you now? Did you? Okay. There was a couple lines, verbatim lines that Lucy had requested to get added into the minutes clarifying vote. So those will be added, incorporated as well. So who made the motion? Okay.
Second.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
B, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending July 31st, 2020.
So move. Seconded.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
C, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the following transfers, and this is just the routine monthly transfers from the school-wide pool.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
D, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the addition of Fund 510 for the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund / CARES Act funds.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yep.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
E, it's recommended that the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to pay the following after-the-fact invoices, $4,354.91 and $2,870.95 to Truck Sales and Service Incorporated.
So moved. Seconded.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
F, it's recommended that the Board of Education authorize the treasurer to dispose of the following list, the following items that are broken and/or obsolete, and destroy it, shredder.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to superintendent's recommendations. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed substitute aide and teacher list as recommended by the Athens MEGS ESC superintendent.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Yedis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
B, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the remote learning plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Who moved? Sorry.
Josh and then Blake.
Okay. Mrs. Udis?
I have some questions about it. I really like how there's information about IEP and gifted programs in there. What about the accounting for the kids' emotional safety and the use of counselors? Because I didn't see that in there very much.
There were 6 criteria that the state, under House Bill 164, wanted in the remote learning plan. So we focused on those 6 criteria, but we are still taking care of the whole child. We had a administrative meeting today and talked about how to incorporate kids on campus this year, and also health recovery services and Hopewell. So even though it's not in the remote learning plan, those activities will still continue.
And will, on the second bullet point, the teacher of record, is that the student's academic coaching? Who's the teacher who is the point person for each student? There won't be 6, right, for one student? Will there be one primary person?
The buildings are working on that. Mrs. Guffey is having one point person for each group of children in the elementary, and then Mr. Ford and Mr. Raines are working on theirs. So they're collectively creating those.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll take the roll if we're ready. Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
C, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed calendar for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
D, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the 2020-2021 Parent-Student Handbook.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Item E, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed request for an unpaid leave of absence for Andrew Monk for the 2020-2021 school year, effective at the expiration of his qualifying FFCRA leave.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Item F, it's recommended that the Board of Education accept the enclosed letters of resignation from the following: Daniel Dosick, it's a high school teacher, and Ryan Van Dyke, assistant girls soccer coach.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Hey, Jay, before we go on,
Uh-huh.
quick clarifying question. How many students does Dan have as he leaves? He's the tech teacher leaving that position, right?
Dan was teaching technology at the junior high level. Dan, how many students do you normally have in a year? In a year? Yes. Okay. But I only have a semester at a time, or sixth graders is only 7 weeks at a time. Yeah. He has different groups, and normally it is a special or an elective, and he has the children for 6 to 9 weeks at a time. With that class, it allows us to give all teachers planning periods. But currently, the way we've created our schedule for 6-12 this year, we've created a block schedule, so no matter what plan we run on, A, B, C, or D, if we end up bringing kids back to the building at some point, we don't have to change the schedule. So currently, we left Mr. Dosik's position vacant until we see what evolves throughout this year.
What would your recommendation sitting here be? Filling that eventually or not?
Yes, we are looking to fill that position. Whether it's this year or next year, we're not sure. And we are brainstorming ideas of that position becoming a STEM position.
So I'll go ahead and tip the rest of my cards. I'm glad to hear that that is your recommendation, that we would look to fill that, and I would encourage it to be this year. As one of the parents of a student who would have had him this year, losing a tech class, which is the T in STEM, at a time where we're going so much tech heavy, I think it would be a great disservice to turn them to a study hall, which is what it currently sits at. So I'm thankful to hear that your plan is to backfill that, and I would encourage that we look really hard at doing it this year.
Okay.
Good, Josh?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so then segueing into item G, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve a one-year contract for Mr. Dosik as the athletic director at step 30 of the board-approved salary schedule effective August 12th, 2020.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
Mr. Regan?
I just had a question for Lindy on this, just for clarification. The need for, it was just recently that we went to a full-time athletic director. And you had some pretty, when I asked you about that, I think it's very important that we all know why you feel there's a need to continue that as opposed to going back to a part-time or supplemental position. If you could explain that for everybody to hear, I think that's something that I know I enjoyed hearing, so.
Okay. Sure. I know going back, if you look at the previous athletic directors, Mr. Schaller was full-time, Larry Hergis was full-time. At one point, it was a part-time position, but as the athletic program grew and we added more sports and the demands of compliance with the state has grown over time, that's a pretty full-time position. If you look at other school districts, majority of the school districts have full-time athletic directors. Some of the duties athletic directors have to do are they schedule all the game managers, they schedule the referees, they schedule all the ticket takers, they balance the tickets that are sold at every game. They have to be at majority of the games. If they can't cover a game, then they schedule a game manager. They assist with tournaments and invitationals. They run the whole Final Forms program, which is completing all student information, coaching information, physical updates, grade eligibility every 9 weeks, meeting with the Tri-Valley Conference monthly, and other state meetings. They back up the high school principal during the day when there are issues in the office. Sometimes we call the AD to cover lunches and other areas of the building. They also have to track every coach, all the coaches' certifications, and if they're up to date every year. They track student eligibility and the paperwork. And now upon us, we have COVID to comply with, so that adds another piece to the athletic director position. So they are pretty busy right now. I know in the past 12 years, we've added women or ladies soccer. We've added wrestling. And we also have the trap shooting team also. Even though it's a club sport, we keep an eye on that too.
And doesn't the athletic directors do the scheduling for this building?
Yes, they work hand in hand with Brian McCollum, but the athletic director takes care of a lot of the scheduling of our facilities.
So with that, Dan, yes, good luck.
Oh, and I can tell you, normally, the life expectancy of an athletic director is less than 5 years, so.
I did find out that Athens is the only other district in our county that has a full-time athletic director. So in our county, it's us and Athens. We haven't heard from Nelsonville, York, and the others have athletic director duties and other duties as well.
Yes, but if you also look at the Patterson report, if you look at administration to student ratio, we are very poor in that area. Athens City has 137 kids to 1 administrator. Alexander has 166 kids per administrator. If you get to Nelsonville, York, and Trimble, they have 1 administrator per 80 students. So,
That's good. Then in the future, when we're asked to vote on this, I voted yes, but that information would have been helpful in the board packet instead of getting it now.
I just want to say, career expectancy or life expectancy is 5 years. Good luck.
Mr. Barnes,
Welcome back, I guess.
because you're up to
Just-
vote. Mr.
Okay.
Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Dosick.
And we're sorry.
You applied, so. Item H, it's recommended that the Board of Education employ the following supplementals for the 2020-2021 school year, pending their meeting all state and local requirements. Under certified, we have Missy Baker, LPDC Chairman, Julie Rice as Secretary of the same organization, Jocelyn Smith, Assistant Girls Soccer. Non-certified, we have Brooklyn Jenks as 7th and 8th grade volleyball, and Jacob Wyrick, Assistant Varsity Football.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
I, it's recommended that the Board of Education employ the following as substitute bus drivers for the 2020-2021 school year, pending their meeting all state and local requirements. Andrew Adkins, Levi Matthews, and Lori Smith.
So move.
Seconded.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
J, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following resolution. Do I have to read all of this?
No.
Okay, this just has to do with basically putting out bids for buses. It doesn't mean we're obligated to purchase buses, but it's through our Meta Solutions?
Yeah, Meta.
Cooperative.
So move.
Seconded.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
K, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the non-union, non-teaching, and administrative salary schedules for the 2020-2021 school year.
So move.
Seconded.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Item L, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following prices for federal and state reimbursable school lunch and breakfast for the 2020-2021 school year. It further authorizes the food service director to adjust non-reimbursable meal item prices as determined to be necessary with the approval of the superintendent. Do we have any questions?
So move.
Seconded.
I do, actually. One of the things we've spoken about in the past is the desire to have more meat in the breakfast. And when I counted here, there's 4 meat helpings out of 22. I'm fine with free breakfast. We have coronavirus and a lot more people are hurting than there were before. But I would like us at the next month to think about looking at getting, we talked about this before, a lot. 2 to 3 meat items per week. I know the breakfast meet the requirements, they have to, we're a school. But if we're gonna feed them, we have to feed them something decent at least half the time. So at the next meeting, I'd like cost estimates about how much it would cost if we added in 1 or 2 extra meat items each week. So we could take a look at that. And by then, we'll have a good sense of what the need is if we pass the free breakfast this morning.
Aaron, you can get that for us,
Oh,
pretty quick, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dan should be able to provide that, Dan Moyer, our food service director.
Lindy, this is paid out of wellness funds, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Go
Yep.
ahead, Erin.
Yes,
Which have gone down, right, Aaron?
yes, they did go down this year.
170,000?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, they went down 170,000 from what the original estimated amount was. They didn't go down 170,000 from what we got last year. If you
Yeah.
remember, when the state put out their 2-year allotment, they projected that we would get over 400,000 this year. We only got 335 last year. So the decrease from last year to this year, I think, was closer to, I can't even remember what the final figure even ended up being, but it wasn't 170,000 less than what we got last year.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
I don't
Are we
think we
running
started
the
the
fall
vote.
routes,
I
just out
made
of
the
curiosity?
recommendation.
I'm sorry?
Fred
made the
the
motion.
recommendation. John
Yeah,
seconded.
I got Fred's motion and Mr. Barnes' second, but I don't think we've taken any votes yet, right?
No, not yet. Josh had a question here real quick.
It's silent in here about it, and I think I know the answer, but just to ask for sure, we're running the bus routes this year to bring meals out to the kids, correct? While we're doing the 9 months or 9 months, sorry.
Bite your
The
tongue.
Yeah, I know, I probably just got thrown a lot of daggers. The 9 weeks start, assuming we go all the way through the 9 weeks remote, we're running the bus routes still to take the food out, correct?
We are running the bus routes just like we did in the summertime. We will deliver food. We will have Wi-Fi accessibility out in the 5 community areas. And we're looking at aides being on the buses to be at the locations during the day
Okay,
to help students with any technology problems they have or tutoring they may need. So we're working on those schedules now.
all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think it would be good to mention as well that I know Mrs. Douglas and Dan Moyer, they're working on a way to try to figure out who needs meals, because something that is different now this year for this first 9 weeks than what happened from March all through summer is that meals are no longer free for anyone who wants them. If you remember, once the school building closure was ordered back in March, the federal government extended free meals to certain schools that qualified, and we qualified for that program. So all of the kids, all of the meals that were served from March through July were free of charge, both breakfast and lunch, and we are reimbursed fully for those. That program has not been extended for this school year. We have reverted back to the normal federal lunch program. So it's all based on qualifications now. So if your student qualifies for free lunch and free breakfast, it would be free. If they qualify for reduced, they would still be charged that reduced amount, the reduced lunch amount. And then if they don't qualify for reduced or free, they would be charged that paid amount if they wanted to get a meal. So I think it just as many times as we can get that out so the parents understand that is different this year. So I think it's important for those parents to reach out if they have a need and still want their kids to be provided meals, because they can be provided meals, but we do have to charge their accounts just like they were walking through the register line in the lunchroom. So
That brings up 2 quick thoughts. Do you know if, the state also increased their support of us over the summer as well? Is that one of the bills that's in front of the legislature when they come back in September? Do you have any idea?
there's been multiple bills presented, but when those will get passed, if they get passed, who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah, I know you're looking at October at best.
Yeah,
when the
yeah,
legislature
but there,
comes
there
back.
has been more than one bill presented to extend that same program that was going on through July, but at this point, it's not been approved.
Okay.
Yeah, they're looking at middle to end of September of possibly one of those bills passing.
Okay.
And they are talking about the next biennial budget, possibly all districts receive
Okay.
free food for students in the next biennial budget.
Okay. And the second point that what you said there, Aaron, brought up, not only do we need the parents to be reaching out to us, but I think we need to double down our efforts. And I guess I'm looking to your right, I'm not looking at you on this one, but we need to double down our efforts to make sure we're reaching out and getting as many people as possible with the information that we need. That's always been an anecdotal problem that we've had, that we've not been able to get enough people to sign whatever paperwork or provide whatever documentation we need to be able to help them. I think we need to double down our efforts to try to make sure we reach those people too. Our economic position, while I saw that they rated, or they gave us a lower ranking as far as percentage of poverty level, the economic outlook is not getting better, which would make the poverty level go down. That's just total reversal of what the reality is.
Well, and
So-
you got to understand that that economic data that you're referring to, that's based on census data, and that's based on people responding and answering the census questions and actually taking the effort to do that, and that
Yep,
just doesn't
that's-
happen a lot.
That's a good point, and that also, in my mind, solidifies even more so that we need to double down our efforts to make sure we're reaching people, not waiting for them to reach out to us.
Okay, Mrs. Yedis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yep.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Okay, we have two items that's an addendum to the agenda. They were late entries this week of items that we need to vote on. So we just went through item L, and now we're going to talk about N. So item N, it's recommended that the Board of Education accept the enclosed letter of resignation from Teresa Stalder, Health Clinic Aide 2, effective August 12th, 2020.
So move. Second.
Mrs. Yedis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
I'm unhappy about it, but I'll say yes to respect her wishes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
And just quickly, Teresa, with everybody's mask, I can't tell. If you're here, if you're listening, either way, on behalf of the board, thank you for all that you've done for your 19 years of service to Alexander, and especially all the trials and tribulations that you had since March. We do wish you the best going forward. As Mr. Collins said, we regretfully accept your resignation letter. Thank you. And the other is item O, and it is recommended that the Board of Education employ the following volunteers pending their meeting all state and local requirements. Talitha Robe, girls soccer volunteer, and Ryan Van Dyke, girls soccer volunteer.
So move.
Seconded.
Mrs. Yedis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
And I see my mistake. Yep, thank you, Josh. To backtrack, I missed item M, so I apologize. So we skipped from L to N, and now we're going back to M. M, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following policies for inclusion in the Policies and Procedures Manual as recommended by OSBA. And it's policy regarding the use of face coverings.
Moved.
Second?
For the sake of clarification, the edits are, including the edits are what we're voting on, or the base?
I don't know if we can approve it with the edits. Is that correct, Lindy?
We can.
Did all of you receive Josh's edits?
Yeah,
I did.
we just got them now
I did.
and earlier.
The only-
I thought you had to check with the staff part before we adopt.
The only piece I'm a little hung up on, I'm okay with the edits. When it comes to disciplinary protocols for staff, that's going to have to be discussed with the unions. The administrative team talked about incorporating that into the union contracts and just putting masks under dress code. It's part of our dress code. Everybody comes in with a proper mask and wears it appropriately. So that's the administrative thoughts on that.
Which is, the edit that was made was to do nothing more than
Yeah, to talk. with them.
exactly what the rest of the policy is, to direct a procedure or direct a protocol be developed. There are no specifics about what discipline should be, no recommendations of what it is or what it shouldn't be. It's just to direct that we have a disciplinary protocol. What was put into the elementary student handbook from, I'm just going to give Melissa and Rich the credit because they're the top of the heap, was very good. It was the only attempt that's been made, despite the number of requests, to actually codify what we're going to do. And that's something that isn't a building level, that's a district, which is exactly what you just indicated, Lindy, with it being in the, whether it be in the handbook or be part of the dress code or whatnot. But this does nothing more than say we want that, which is what we've all, well, at least 3 or 4 of us have said multiple times. We just want the protocol developed.
Yeah,
So where are we at
But
on,
if we
Yeah.
can't vote on the edits,
we're voting on this on
that's
the
fine.
edits.
I would
Voting on the
then say let's
amended.
table it and get it next go.
is that something we have to have in place before school starts, Aaron, Lindy? If we table it
I would assume that you would probably want that in place before the
before school starts? Okay. Is it something that we can approve as is and then have changes at the next board meeting? Or just have, or
Recent
we have
history's
no
been, we
policy?
can just do it right now.
What's that?
Recent
Yeah,
history's
this-
been, we can just do it right now.
This is just saying, please look into having clear enforcement policies, that's all. It doesn't say what it is.
The policies would be separate from this, the discipline piece.
Wherever they go, but we're asking to look into that.
Okay.
Okay, so is it fair then to have someone make a modified motion instead of as read?
Yeah.
Or I'm still lost a little bit on what your motion might be. Are we gonna vote on M or modify it?
I think we have to vote on, my personal opinion on policies, we have to vote on M, and we have the first reading of the edits this time, which gives us the ability to adapt, or whatever you want to call it, change in a month. That way the
I see what
policy's
you're
in
saying.
place.
And
we
revise
have
it
the
next
first
month. Yep.
reading of the amendments. And I noticed that this isn't on, so I apologize. And that would give us, the next month, we could actually vote on the amendments.
What I would do is
Approve it now,
approve
revise
this
it next.
with
Yeah,
the
that's a good
items
solution.
that have been changed, and then the disciplinary protocol is a separate document.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
So I think
what
we
it's been
could
all
just
along.
vote on as is.
Blake's got a good solution.
So vote on M.
Jay,
Yes, sir?
when you say you must comply, minimum face coverings and must comply with CDC guidelines and be properly worn to cover an individual's nose, mouth, and chin. with as fluid as the CDC has been, and then the governor steps in, and then the health department steps in, how are you going to go out and tell somebody they don't have a proper face mask before they can come in? I think, I don't have a problem with the changes, but my point is, who's going to be the police around here and enforce some of these things? I think we got to be very careful as far as who's going to tell someone that doesn't meet the CDC guidelines. Now, if it's just a napkin, I understand that, but you got to be careful getting really technical here.
That's why that comply with CDC guideline gets thrown in there all the time. And unfortunately, I've got firsthand experience with seeing how this works out. If it's left just as cloth/fabric, somebody comes in with fishnet wrapped around their head, it's cloth.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I said I think we need to have the CDC guideline in there.
Yeah. My feeling about this district belongs to the people who pay the taxes. I'm willing to listen to CDC to be safe. I'm willing to listen to the health department to be safe, but they're not paying my taxes. So I think I got no problem with it, but good God, we're getting stuck with more regulations every day.
All right, bring me up to speed, Aaron. Did we ever get a motion, or where are we at?
I make a
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah,
with
Mrs.
the
Udis made the
change.
motion, and Blake seconded it, and my understanding, so we're all clear, is you are making a motion to approve the policy as is, and then with the edits, we'll have a first reading of the edits to be approved at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Yep. Okay, so I can take the roll then for the approval of the current policy. Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes?
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
and Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Okay, sorry I was out of order there on the items on the agenda, but back on course. Business initiated by board members. I had requested that this topic be put on the agenda tonight, just to give people a heads up that we would be speaking on it. We are 5 short days, I believe, away from the opening of the school year. And it's something that us as a board has been talking about for a month or more. One week we have a discussion and we're pointed down this path, and then OSHA comes out with guidelines, or the Ohio Director of Health comes out with something, and I talked to Dr. Gaskell and I asked him, what does this mean? And he points me down this path. Well, guess what? After the governor spoke yesterday and guidelines today, we're back down this path. So my frustration level with this is pretty high, and just because of the unclear direction. And again, it's put back very explicitly by the governor. It's put back to us to make that decision. So I want to open up for discussion, if I could, what the board would like to do regarding all extracurricular activities this fall, in light of us being remote for the first 9 weeks. So this includes sports, it includes band, every extracurricular activity. So I would like to open it up for discussion or comments.
Want me to start off?
Go ahead, Fred.
Okay, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm going to vote for all extracurricular activities. But I'm also going to state that I think it's as hypercritical as it can be. We've got kids that are out there that are isolated, poor nutrition, homes that are less than ideal for them at times. The safest place to be is in school. But the state says we shouldn't be in school at times and stuff, and I understand that. I have no problem with the threat of COVID and everything else, but it's interesting to me, and if I'm wrong, the football coach can correct me, but I've got a son that's the athletic director at Chesapeake, and he tells me that to go to an away football game, it's one person in a seat. You have to dress prior to the game, and you're going to take your shoulder pads and whatnot, and your helmet. You're going to have your temperature checked before you get on the bus. But you usually get to a football game roughly 2 hours before the game's played. We're not to go in a locker room. We're supposed to stay outside. Probably shouldn't go to a bathroom that's shared by any other person in the public. So you're asking football players to go 5 hours without going to the bathroom. Thank God they're not my age. They'd never make it. But the biggest issue, especially on turf fields, is watching MRSA, ringworm, and things like that. He says the best way to protect kids from that is to shower immediately after the game. Well, we're not going to shower after the game. We're going to go back and get on the bus. So the very health officials that tell us that it's unsafe to have half our kids in here at any one time, or that's our feeling, we can't do that. But we can go out and do extracurriculars. It just doesn't make sense to me. That being said, I would never deny, as much as I want kids that need to be here as often as they can, and that's been voted on, and I can't change that. To say we can't have extracurriculars is just punishing those kids that want to play, and they only have 4 years. We already took away spring sports. If you're a senior, you lost in the spring, you very well are going to lose if we vote it down. So I strongly support it. My only question is, football's going to have 6 games and then everyone's in the playoffs. Is the safety of the kids being driven by the state and the governor, or is it the idea that football and basketball provide the revenue for just about every high school's sports? So are we concerned about kids, or are we concerned about the dollar? I don't know. I can go either way for this reason. If those dollars provide opportunities for kids to play sports, absolutely. I played sports, most positive thing I've ever done. Nothing against the academic side, but I learned more about life and getting up when you're knocked down than playing sports. You hear kids say all the time, life's not fair, or it's not fair. Well, life's not fair either. But there's no better place to learn it on a football field, a soccer field, any sport, I was in the band till I got to high school and had too many activities, but I had a great time at the band, so I support it. I just think that it's awful hypocritical for the kid out there that needs positive feedback from teachers and staff, a decent meal, and a safe place for at least 6 to 8 hours. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Anybody else share an opinion?
I do, and I'll take that bait as someone who voted to have the school go remotely. When I voted to have the school start 9 weeks in remote, for me it was a question of safety for the kids and the teachers for 8 hours a day and probably 2 hours total on the buses. In an epidemic, a pandemic that we've never experienced before. I mean, honestly, I'll take MRSA over COVID. I'll take all the other stuff over COVID. We're still finding out about the long-term effects of COVID. For me, the criteria is different. kids are required to be in school. We had to be ready to have kids in school. 800 kids, maybe 600, half the kids. We had to be ready to have the kids in this school. We had staff. That is much different than an extracurricular activity that people choose. And I know I've heard from several people who have said, how can it be fair that you voted to go remote, and then you might be thinking about having the extracurricular activities go? And for me, there's a difference between what you have to do and what you can choose. It's just that simple. And I do think we have to keep, depending upon what we vote on, we have to keep events as limited as possible. And I think about all the extracurricular activity events. If you think about fairness, the extracurricular activities are helping the junior high and the high schoolers. What about the elementary? They don't have extracurricular activities. They have Christmas plays. How are we going to do that? If we do the extracurricular activities, we need to focus, as DeWine said, on the player, the parents, and the officials. And as I can't remember how he put it, those who helped the kid get there. That's it. He said Friday night football won't be Friday night football anymore. I really do want to leave it up to the people in charge of the curricular activities to decide what they do and when they do it. But it scares me if we have the band at the football games, at the home games. I mean, you have 100 people with the band and the families and 100 people with the teams and the families. That's 200 people, even outside. And all the stuff that happened in July was because of outside social events that people were going to. People weren't inside in July, they were outside. Cheer, cheer is with the teams. I don't know how you can separate that out. I don't even know if they'd want to anyway. And we have FFA. FFA is coming up. They have the fair in Albany. We had FFA participate already in the Athens County Fair. I don't think we saw any increase in COVID in our community from that. And what I've seen and what I've heard, I've seen the sports teams, at least the junior high and the high school soccer and junior high football and junior high volleyball do a really good job. We have young coaches and they're wearing masks at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That wasn't happening 2 months ago. So I see a lot of people doing what they need to do. And I've heard that the FFA is doing that, and the band just had a really good socially distanced band camp. So I understand the thinking, but when I look at it, there's a difference between required activities and extracurricular. Parents can always pull their kid if they're unsafe, if they feel that things are unsafe, and ultimately it's up to the coach or the advisor of that activity to keep people safe. I do worry if we go into, I don't think we should go anywhere purple. If anywhere's purple a week before, we don't go. The purple is don't go anywhere, stay at home. By that point, of course, DeWine probably would shut things down anyway, but I see that we have more leeway, and we need to give more leeway for extracurricular activities, as long as they're still doing the same things we expect at school. Mask wearing, distancing when possible, except tackling, of course, and washing hands, I guess.
Thank you, Lucy.
Quick question, Aaron, just because it's been ringing in my brain since it was said. We lose money playing football, correct? We lose the most money playing football.
I don't know if it's the most. I don't have that data in front of me, but we lose money in every sport.
Yeah, it's not a money maker. There's no money behind this. It costs us money to do this.
Not for our district, no.
Not in the school. He was talking at the state level.
Oh, at the state level. I don't know if they make money. at the
Aaron,
state
tell them how much we do make at the gate on a normal year. I mean, we lose money every year on sports, but this year with COVID and the restriction of spectators, A normal year, what do we bring in at the gate?
Gate revenues, I mean, you're talking roughly 100,000 in that area. But that's for the full year. That's
Full
not
year,
just one sport.
100,000 in tickets at the gates of all extracurricular activities. This year with COVID, you know, sports always cost the district money, but it's going to cost us more this year.
My point was that the money just was sticking in my head, like, I can see that at, like, at Ohio State, the money matters, and they've postponed their season. I mean, they're probably costing themselves possibly millions, if not billions of dollars in revenue. But here it's a different idea. But before I make anything, I sent some questions. I was just wondering, you know, Dan, you've officially held the position for 30 minutes, so I'm going to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. I was wondering, you know, listening to the governor's conversations yesterday, he brought out a couple of topics that every school should be aware of. And I didn't know if you yourself or had those conversations, or Brad had them and transferred them to you through telepathy or whatever else. The possibility of moving, have you talked about the possibility of moving sports to spring? Not that I'm in favor of it or anything like that. Spectators, how are we going to handle the spectators, family, and only those close to the child or participant? Marching band and drill at halftime. And so I was wondering if you had, and then the last one that I added in was that, have you guys talked at all about traveling to or hosting teams from high-risk areas? So I didn't know if any of those had come up in any of the conversations, either yourself or at the TVC level. Just so-
Dan's working closely with the Tri-Valley Conference, and they're trying to work a lot of these things out together. He had 5 sheets of paper in his hands this morning, so.
I'd say we're trying to follow the governor's suggestions on everything. We're going to take temperatures, fans coming in, so forth. The main thing is we're probably only going to be at about 20% as far as admission to trying to get people in. Just guessing and things, because I just tried to walk it off and trying to look at that. Our high school gym probably, in order to keep our students and staff safe, we're going to rope some places off so that that's where they're sitting. And we can probably only going to fit in probably about 110, 120 family members probably. So I'm planning on doing some sort of a pass list right now, unless the TVC comes up with something different, where the players can put down who they want to come and support them, and they get that chance to purchase a ticket. That gets done first, and then after that, if we have anything left, which I doubt, because we're even looking at, because I talked to Coach Bobo today, matter of fact about it, and she had 60 varsity of her players, 60 fans, or basically family members, for her alone, for the varsity. So we're trying to look at maybe letting the JV come in first, have their parents watch. We'll have to communicate it with their parents, and then we're going to ask them to leave so that the varsity parents can come in and also watch. Same thing with the 7th and 8th grade. Hopefully be able to, in between, spray things down real quick so we have the safety of the fans also then. So it's going to be time consuming, but it's also going to hopefully get the parents to be able to watch their kids play. As far as fans from the community, you know, I'm also looking at, I got an appointment on Friday to try to, I think it's called Box or something, to be able to live stream things. I don't know what the cost is yet because I haven't talked to them. So, you know, we're looking at different opportunities for fans to be able to watch, but the more important thing is for the parents to get in to see their kids. So I forget what some of the other ones that you...
Traveling to or hosting from
Right now, we're going-
high-risk counties?
traveling, to tell you, volleyball, we ended up canceling a scrimmage because it was a scrimmage and wasn't a regular season game when the county turned red. That would be a case-by-case situation probably, and communicating with the other school district. More than likely, it's just gonna just, be a case-by-case situation. Purple, yeah, I agree, we're not going.
Purple's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, we're not going. So, but I ended up with an email today, had a team cancel for boys and girls soccer for Monday already. So it's gonna be fluid where the schedule's gonna change constantly, not knowing what's gonna happen. It could be the day before we get canceled for a football game. We're still looking for week 2, because that's our bye in the schedule. We can't find anybody that can, that has a bye to be able to play in week 2. So, it's just a fluid thing that, we're constantly changing, trying to work out.
Are there other particularly squirrely requirements or guidelines that are in the governor's that was sent out today?
Well, of course, the temperature stuff, they were supposed to release something out by noon today that I never did see. So, it's not there yet?
Yeah, I've been trying to hope something pops up.
Yeah, so, yeah, he has not, it was supposed to have been released, but he said by noon, according to the webinar that I listened to last night at 6 o'clock. No, I have not seen it. And it's supposed to be more detailed as to what they talked about. So I'm kind of waiting for that to kind of make some final decisions, but, until he does that, we're going to try to follow all of his recommendations, his requirements, as best we can, and still to get our parents in to watch.
What about senior night, keeping it celebratory but not,
Yeah. That's going
humongous?
to be a hard thing to do, because you can't, with not being able to gather, in a close area, it's hard to do. We're making the suggestion to try to do senior night as early in the year as possible. But some of the student athletes have asked to have the student still be toward the end of the year, because they're hoping things change so that more people can come. And, I said, I don't know if it will change, so we'll have to wait and see.
How are you going to do with the visiting teams? If you figure they've got, let's say,
There-
40 football players and 10 coaches, statisticians, cheerleaders, do you just give them
Going to give them so many
tickets?
tickets for them so that their parents can get in
Right.
and do that way. I know you talked about the locker room. We're going to make the locker rooms available for them to be able to go to the restroom.
Okay.
So they're not going into the public restroom.
Good.
Down for the football, soccer will be the field house. Okay, so we'll use the field house for that. Up here at the gym, of course, be the boys' locker room because it'd be volleyball.
Sure.
But we're still planning on having them be able to use it, but we're encouraging them to come ready to play, bring their own water, so forth.
Mhm.
When's everything supposed to be effective with the governor's guidelines?
Monday.
Right, as soon as he gives them out, we're supposed to be following them. But, the first football, actually, we got a scrimmage Friday, right, Coach? Okay. Got a scrimmage Friday, which is something that came down from the Ohio High School Athletic Association through the governor, that they can have a scrimmage. Granted, no fans are allowed on it, but they are allowed to scrimmage another school district finally. Right now, our first soccer match is Saturday. So, and he comes out, today, and supposed to have it out by noon, but I don't know what, everything is yet, and we got a match Saturday, so it's gonna be a quick change around on everything.
I'm just trying to follow all the different news points. Do you know, did they release anything else on the unbelievable restrictions or requirements of testing?
No testing for high schools.
There is none whatsoever testing?
No, there is no testing. We do not have to test. But we follow the guidelines of temperature check, and the players and all that answer those questions. They do it every day for practice even.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, our coaches have been very reliable. If they do not email myself with a sheet or send it, they do have their sheet with them that we can always follow up with, that the temperature was checked. And each one of them's got a way to check it.
What do we do in the case of exposure or a positive test on our?
If we get a positive test, we're probably shutting that sport down probably.
Or just that team.
Well, that team, it depends on whether they were with, which I doubt they would be with exposed to the other teams or.
And we would defer to the,
Health
we would
department.
defer to the Athens County Health Department to
Department.
the
And
investigation
find
of
out.
tracing would,
Do the tracing, were they closely exposed with our players, which more than likely probably would be. But hopefully, Health Department would be involved completely when we have a positive case.
Yeah, they take over.
That,
thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on sports?
You and I haven't said anything. You want to flip for it?
Yeah, you win.
So for the sake of pointing it out, first and foremost, I know we have a coach here. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry. We have a second coach? Okay. Sorry. And I know we have several parents that I've seen at practices almost religiously helping out. You guys need to be commended. We as a group, a couple, 3 months ago, said, thou shalt follow the guidelines that were put in front of us for summer, and y'all met it. Y'all raised to the occasion. It was definitely a case of learn to walk before you run. And every single person that has been either a coach during the summer or has assisted or has been a parent that's helped out one of the assistants or coaches needs to be commended because of the response that you guys had. Slide that aside. That's something that had to be said before we go any further. In looking at this, it's a strange problem to solve. Putting the same logic in the discussion of do we open schools in person, using that same logic here, you have the health to be concerned about, the safety to be concerned about, and education, we'll call it life education, if you will. When we talked about whether or not we could open the school, that was a very, very simple decision in my mind. We couldn't meet the minimum requirements, and we heard from all of our department heads saying we couldn't get there in time. We just heard a different story. So applying the same logic, we're in a much, much better position to start than we were a month ago when we were talking about can we bring the kids into the school. Strangely enough, there's the same logical approach puts you in a position where you have to say, no, we're not ready to go, because we don't even know what all the requirements are. We just heard it's not posted yet. So it's a really, really strange problem to solve there. And as I walked through the door this evening, I still didn't know what I would say, and I now know what I would say based on the guy back there in red. And based on what, I'm pointing over here because I know that's where the two coaches are, but pointing on what this group primarily is here to talk about, I'm certain of it, what y'all have done. what we just heard is we're ready enough, we're going to make it happen, there's enough of a plan in place. And we've already seen people living it. That's the sort of metered approach that we've needed across the board. And unfortunately, we got way too late of a start. We got way too discombobulated of a start in other areas. But the extracurricular group, and I'm not just going to say coaches in that case, I know of other groups that have met, other clubs that have met, have been living and have been living the life and have been walking the walk all along it. And it's a whole lot more comfortable position to be sitting here hearing that and realizing that you can be a whole lot more confident that we're still going to be following things, and oh, by the way, we're a whole lot closer than we would have been otherwise. So I thank you, Mr. Dosick, for filling us in there for the last few minutes, because those are big questions in my mind as well, and you did them well. I appreciate that. I'm going to, okay, sorry. You were my teacher back in high school at one point. So I trusted you then, and I trust you now. I know you're not going to throw our kids into a position that if you can't. Quit telling my age. Everybody knows. We already talked about what step you're starting on. I know that you, and I know that the community that's already shown that they can live the life and walk the walk. I know that group and you will say, Uncle, when it's required. If we can't meet something, I know you're going to follow the guidelines and say, even if it's the day before, sorry guys, we can't do it. You mentioned purple, you mentioned red in counties. That's something that I recognize that, but I want us to, I think we really need to think hard about that. The strange thing about that part, we're always trying to keep, or the whole idea here is to keep the kids safe, keep it out of our school. If we're going to red counties or red counties are coming to us, let's take a moment to think objectively about it and do a little bit of soul searching. Recall where all hell broke loose for all of us is as soon as somebody turned red. You know, the governor gave us the big dad speech. Come on, guys, you're doing great. You know, and then red hit, and he said, nope, you ain't got the keys to the car no more. So think about that. Challenge yourselves to soul search about that, whether or not we really need to be taking that level of risk. That's something that is questionable in my mind. But again, you guys are living it, you're walking it, so I would trust you to make a decision not being bent to the desires of what you'd like to do, but making sure that it's a decision made to the safety of the kids. So, back to my very first thing, thank you all, those of you that have been part of, I know several of the faces that have been part of either coaching, assisting, or helping those coaches and assistants, because you all need commended for what you have done. And the kids, they won't thank you because they're not of the age to really appreciate it yet, but the kids will thank you as well someday. And thank you for your discussion, Mr. Dosick. That helped me in an enormous amount in the last 15 minutes.
Good. I guess that leaves me. I've heard from a lot of people, mostly via email, and to those that sent me an email, again, my inbox has been flooded, and I did not respond to anyone that sent me an email. I just did not physically have the time in the day to answer everyone, but they were read, every one of them. The hypocrisy of this is not lost on me. It's something that I do have an appreciation for a lot of the people that mentioned that. It's like, hey, if you can't be in school, shut sports down too. But I'm not there. The same logic that I use to vote for returning the kids to school, it applies to this. And the biggest thing is the parents have a choice. our parents have a choice that if they don't want their kid to play sports or they think it's too dangerous, they don't have to participate. And I'll be brief, I'm all for it. So it's a way to get our kids back in the building, back on school property at least, have some interaction with their fellow classmates. And I'm not a psychologist, I don't pretend to be, don't play one on TV, but just the Athens Messenger article a couple days ago talks about suicide rates on the increase, and it didn't specifically say among high school or school-age kids, it's just in general. But as a board member, I try to think about what's best for all the kids, and I'm not saying that the rest of the board is not in the same mindset. We all are trying to do what we think is best for every child. You know what, we're going to have differing opinions, but you know what, I think at the end of the day, we all respect each other, and what's lost, I think, in today's society is that we can have differing opinions, but you know what, we can still respect one another. Because the good Lord made us all different. We're not going to agree on everything. So enough of my soapbox, but since I'm the last one to speak, do we need to make a motion
I
here?
would like to address one thing
No?
real quick.
So if we do nothing,
We just
sports goes
continue
on. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'd
Go ahead,
just like
Blake.
to address one thing, there's been several people that contacted me, as well, the word's been thrown out a couple times, hypocritical. Everybody I've mentioned my viewpoint of sports is kind of taken back and not had a real good response, and so I'd love to throw it out there to people. My view on, even if we were in school, is if you wanted to take the higher risk of doing extracurriculars in general that involve going outside of our community, my personal viewpoint is then you are option 2, remote learning to begin with. Because if you're going to take that higher risk yourself, the thing with this virus is you're taking a higher risk for every single person you're around as well. It's your choice, not theirs. So if you had the person next to you choosing not to participate, you've just made that choice for them. So it was my viewpoint that if we were in school, in person, plan C, plan A, B, C, whatever you want to go, it was my viewpoint that if you wanted to participate and take that higher risk, you should also be in option 2. And that was where I stood. Now, is that the way it would have happened? No. We've seen other school districts go the exact opposite way, where if you choose to do remote, you cannot play, which I'm not going to get into that one, but that was my viewpoint. If you want to take that risk, that's your choice, but you are making that choice for everybody else around you. When it came to education, the question was, can we do it effectively? And what continually was said throughout the last board meeting is that we couldn't do it effectively at that point. What I hear from the coaches and the directors of all the different extracurriculars, or the supervisors and the participants in this, they all have the choice, and that's a big thing, is the choice to increase their risk. If we fail at putting a team on a field or putting together a play, you forfeit. No big deal. We move on. If we fail to educate, we are doing long-term harm. Part of our soft opening idea was to start bringing teachers back to work, get to know the system of what an online system is going to entail. So if the case were to come where we have to go all remote the whole rest of the year, we are ready for it. This is a whole new system. I don't know if anybody's been in, I think every teacher that has been in this building the last 3 days can tell you, they probably actually can't tell you because they can't find the words for what they're going through. And I see every administrator back there shaking their head, yes, there's a lot to this. And they're going to need that time. And we're going to educate the best we can. So we bring them back, and we bring them back safely. We bring our sports back. We bring them back safely. We've done this with small groups. At 9 weeks, if we can accomplish this, I don't see, and I hate the fact that I use the word if, and that's the part that eats at me. But if we can accomplish this as a community, do things right, just as the governor was saying, if we can do this right, I don't see any reason why in 9 weeks we can't be plan A or B or C. And I'm leaning towards B or A. If we can line up, and I hate keep going back to football like it's the only sport that's out there, but if you can line up nose to nose and be hitting for 60 minutes, you better sure, I'm going to wash my mouth here, but you can bet that you can sit next to a child for 48 minutes and do an activity. And that's, if we can do this, we have the opportunity to bring 1,500 of our students back into this building where they belong. And that's my hope. So the hypocritism, I'll take it. You want to call me that, but that's my viewpoint. I just wanted to share it. Sorry.
Thanks, Blake. So, Aaron has said, so if we're in agreement to allow sports to continue, we don't have to do anything.
Or all
Or extracurricular, yes, thank you for the correct, yes, all extracurricular activities in the fall. So in that light, if someone wants to make a motion, it would be that we don't allow extracurricular activities. So if there is that motion from anyone, now would be the time to bring it up. Negative, okay.
I have another board thing, Jay.
Okay, so just for clarification, by our inaction, extracurricular activities for the fall in light of us remote are still on, just for clarification. So play away. Okay, Lucy, you have a board item that you'd like to
Yes.
mention?
I don't know if we'll have to vote on it, but I just wanted to be clear. This is about the district reopening plan overview, and I've seen this same text in different places in different ways. And it's about who decides the plan that the school is under. Under the planning overview, reopening plan overview, it says that the superintendent, along with guidance from the Athens County Health Department, will determine and reevaluate the opening plan every 9 weeks. In a different document, it says the superintendent with the board president will reevaluate and decide every 9 weeks. I firmly believe it should be the board, the full board. So I'd like to discuss that, make a motion, whatever, but I would like clarity, and I would like us to figure that out. And this isn't about closing in an emergency. This is about who has the authority to determine the level of of the buildings being open.
Just to clarify, moving up a level?
I mean, I only want to go up.
I'm saying,
it's-
in
but
clarity, we're talking, when I say up, I mean from reverse alphabetical?
From
Like
remote
D
to
to
2-3.
C, C
From-
to B,
From
B
remote
to
to 2-3
A.
or whatever. It's just, I would like to change the word superintendent and put board and
Lucy?
move superintendent to Athens.
That is for, we started on Plan D. We're
Yeah.
staying on Plan D for 9 weeks until the board comes back together and decides if they want to move off of that.
Okay,
That plan is, if we were on Plan A and running full tilt, what you're reading in the reopening plan, if we were on Plan A running full tilt and COVID started to, an outbreak, how do we downshift? In the middle of a week, when I get a phone call, then I would call Mr. Barnes and we would have a discussion with the health department. At this time, where do we need to go? If we're on Plan B or Plan C, And right now, it looks like we're going 9 weeks at a time. So the first 9 weeks, we're on Plan D. My administration would like to know before, 30 days before we hit that 9-week period, you know, what is the board's intention for the second 9 weeks, so we can start planning. So when you look at that plan, that is to be fluid if we were moving up and down the scale throughout the year.
I understand the plan, it's the text under learning options. And I understand the need in an emergency for you and Jay to get together and work with the health department.
Well, I think the board made it clear the past 2 months that we're going 9 weeks, and then the board will decide for the second 9 weeks.
Yeah. Is that, do the rest of the board members feel that way too?
You were pointing to inconsistencies. Again, you were pointing originally to inconsistencies in the text, right?
In different documents, correct.
So at least, at very minimum, what comes out of this is we need to clean up the documents to make sure they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And
Even in what we approved today, there are 2 different versions.
Okay.
But Linda, you were saying that document where it says you and the health department, that's just the restart. That's not at 9 weeks from now.
No,
Correct.
that's not.
All right.
Okay. As long as this is reflected in the minutes in some appropriate way, Aaron, I'm fine with it.
So I think it's worthwhile, though, to make sure that the text is clear, is consistent, regardless of where we use these decisions. And I would agree with you. At a minimum, we need, you know, Jay's name next to it as board president, knowing at least how things work. At a minimum, we're all going to get a phone call, the other 4 of us, at one point, and say, hey, here's what's coming.
Then I'll make a
Is
motion
there a
to
major
change
issue?
the text, because we did vote on this official document. This was the 5-hour-long document. Under learning options, first line, change superintendent to board, and add the superintendent to before Athens County Health Department. Will determine and reevaluate the operating plan every 9 weeks. It'd be great if eventually we could just decide we're good for the rest of the year. I made a motion. If anyone wants to second it or not, doesn't matter.
Lucy, can you direct me to where you are changing your text?
Alexander, it wasn't in the documents from today.
It was not, okay.
It was in one that we approved at the last meeting.
Okay.
It's called the Alexander Local School District Reopening Plan Overview.
Second before the discussion.
Second heading, Learning Options, that paragraph.
Okay, so humor me, please, read what it says now, please.
The district will operate on the following plan, period. What it says now, the superintendent, along with guidance from the Athens County Health Department, will determine and reevaluate the operating plan every 9 weeks. If Athens, it goes on, if Athens County is elevated to the COVID level purple, the district will close for a set amount of days to be determined by the Athens County Health Department and superintendent. That I'm fine with, that's not, it's just that first sentence.
So you had a motion, I'll second. I'm okay with that.
Aaron, do you want to get a picture of this, or you know, you have enough information?
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so now humor me one more time and
Sure.
read what you want it to say, just for the record.
The district will operate on the following plan. The board, along with guidance from the superintendent and the Athens County Health Department, will determine and reevaluate the operating plan every 9 weeks.
Is there any conflict there? Is it just a matter of language cleanup?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Because, I mean, I agree, it's a board decision.
Well, as this evolves and as we learn more, I'm fine with that decision. Every 9 weeks, we come back, we revisit. Now,
Okay,
if there's an outbreak, we may have to downshift and go back to D in the middle of the 9 weeks, but. you know,
And that's
a phone call.
totally, that's you working with the health department and talking with Jay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Aaron, I'll ask you to call the roll.
Mrs. Zetas,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else under board initiated business before we move forward? Okay, do we have any board reports? Okay, public participation on non-agenda items. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dawn Deputy.
Yeah, if you would, come up to the microphone, please.
Sorry. My name is Dawn Deputy. I live on Pearlwood Road, and I noticed that was needed to be said. But I just had a question about how it's going to be determined who the new photographer for the school is going to be. I know that we were asked to put a proposal in. I didn't know if that was something that was going to be presented to the board, to the athletic director, or how does that go about? I just want to know what the process is.
Right now, Mr. Downard has closed up his shop. Mr. Raines and I have been working on this. We've gotten 3 applicants. We've interviewed 2. We've looked at the materials from all 3. We would like to offer one photographer a 1-year contract to see what they can do, and then go from there.
Okay, I just wanted to know what the process was.
Sure, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? If not, our next regular meeting will be Wednesday, September 16th, 7 o'clock. Any conflicts with anybody? September 16th, 2020?
Hold on.
Hold on.
We changed the schedule, and I teach till 6:30 on Wednesday.
So an alternate proposal for you?
I can do, yeah, so I now teach to, I'm sorry, 6:15, so I can get here. Never mind.
You'll
I
be
can-
fine?
I'll be here.
Okay.
That's fine. All right, sorry. I'd opened my calendar. So I'm okay with
Good.
that.
Lucy? Good. Okay, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be September 16th, 2020, 7 o'clock. Check our Facebook page a week or so before whether we go back to the library or continue to have it in here. If there's no other business, I'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
Seconded.
That was quick.
Mrs. Zetas,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes. Thanks for coming.